Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Denny Williams. And Denny is in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in January of 2022. And after treatment and an esophagectomy in May of 2022 to remove his esophagus and a portion of his stomach, he is currently NED, or no evidence of disease. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's an avid sports fan. He's married with 2 boys. He loves to cheer on the Cincinnati Reds and the University of Louisville. And he works as a high school athletic director. And he is an advocate for the mental health side of cancer, as well as an Epic Experience camp volunteer. So we're going to get into all of that today. And I'm so excited to have Denny on today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure being here. And I do have to correct you. So when you say Louisville, you have to mumble it. Here in the South, it's Louisville, rolls off your tongue.
Louisville. Okay. Louisville. All right. Well, here in Colorado, we actually have a town that we pronounce Louisville.
Yes.
So, getting the two mixed up, and I usually end up with a kind of a mix of the two for both of them.
I hear you.
All right. So let's get started, Denny. Tell me a little bit about your cancer experience. What was going on in your life when you were diagnosed? How were you diagnosed? Kind of give me the not the juicy bits, but the bits.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking back, you can always kind of pinpoint certain things that happened and kind of correlate it to my diagnosis. Look back, and it was July, summer of probably 21. I remember feeling I had a pain kind of in my upper abdomen, my stomach area. And I just thought, that's kind of out of the ordinary, and didn't think anything of it at the time. And a couple of weeks went by, and pain was still there. So I thought I'd go see my primary care doctor. And of course, had the appointment, and, he's poking around, feeling my abdomen, and, nothing out of the ordinary. And, he kind of brought up, he said, well, you're well in your 40s now, and you have 2 young kids, and you're active. He said, you probably pulled a muscle or something like that. And so, I left the appointment thinking, no big deal. Well, a couple of weeks went by, the pain's still there. So I call him back, and he said, well, come back in. We'll do an ultrasound. We'll take a look around. And sure enough, they did an ultrasound, and it came back positive. Couldn't find anything. A couple of weeks went by. And guess what? Pain is still there. So I call him back, and he said, well, at this point, maybe we should send you to a GI doctor. Maybe they'll end up doing a scope, something of that nature. So made that appointment, and that was in November of 19. And Melissa, literally, I was in there for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I answered some questions. They said, all right, well, let's do a scope. Let's take a look around. Again, this was November. Well, this was the height of COVID. They said their first available appointment would be March of 22.
Oh my gosh.
So 5 months away.
Wow.
But again, I wasn't having I didn't feel bad. I wouldn't have any symptoms. It was just sharp pain. And so I went ahead with it. I said, okay, we'll take a look around in March. Well, between Thanksgiving and Christmas that year, things really started to change. Before, I wasn't having any issues swallowing food or anything. But like I said, in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I really started to have issues. I couldn't swallow any food. Anything that I would take down, I would immediately regurgitate right after. So then, I started to get really concerned because that's just not normal. And of course, you use Dr. Google, and you hear of all these things. Exactly.
Yeah.
You immediately go to worst case scenario. And so I'd reached back out to the GI firm and asked them if they had anything before March. I'd love to get in. And sure enough, they had a cancellation early January. They were able to get me in on January 5th. And so I went in for a scope. And Melissa, I remember waking up to the doctor and my wife had papers, had pictures, and we're talking. And the first thing I heard is said, he was right. There's something down there. They didn't call it a tumor. They didn't call it cancer. Which, again, ironically, looking back, they immediately took me in for a PET scan right after that. And then the following day, I got that phone call, you have cancer. And like you mentioned, it was esophageal cancer. luckily, I guess you could say, we caught it. It was isolated to that spot. It hadn't spread anywhere. Basically, the tumor was located at the base of my esophagus and right at the top of my stomach. And so they identified it as adenocarcinoma, one of the more aggressive types. Basically, they told me we need to get moving. And so that was January 5th. That following week, I had surgery to get my port put in, rested up for another week, and then started chemo and radiation immediately. So within about a week and a half, 2 week span, not only did I find out I had cancer, I was already starting treatments. And so my regimen, they put me through 6 chemo sessions, and then I did 30 days of radiation, and it was all back to back. My chemo was weekly, and then radiation was every day. So
you had a busy few months.
I had a busy few months, and that's the point that I really want to talk about. Kind of the mental health side of things is everything happens so fast, and you get all this information when you're diagnosed with cancer that you really can't comprehend what's going on. Mm-hmm. You're just kind of going with the flow. You're doing what doctors and nurses and everybody's telling you to do, and you're just showing up for all these appointments. And it was after treatment. I'm glad today that I can say that the treatments work. Tumor was shrunk and gone after those sessions. So then it was time to move on to the surgery part of it. And as you mentioned, that May I had a full esophagectomy, which they removed my entire esophagus and the top third of my stomach. And so just the complications and the durations of that type of surgery, it was another 7-8 weeks of recovery.
Wow.
I was put on the feeding tube. I couldn't have anything by mouth for about 3 weeks. So I was on a feeding tube for 16 hours a day. Once they finally were able to do the test where they did the gastric pull through right here in my throat to make sure there was no leaks and everything was healing properly, I could, get to go to a liquid diet and start having, ice chips and clear liquids. But believe me,
better than a feeding tube, I would say.
Yes, it never tasted so good in your entire life when you can't even brush your teeth hardly. So, went through surgery, recovered from that, and it's been NED ever since. Matter of fact, I had a scan just this last week. It came back clean. So this November, I'll be 2.5 years NED, which
is congratulations!
Big celebration, absolutely. I'm almost to that halfway mark of that magic 5-year mark.
Now, are the scans every 6 months for the full 5 years?
6 months for now. I'm thinking, again, just had an appointment this week. I'm assuming after my next one will be that 3-year mark. By the way he's talking, if everything continues that path, I might get moved to, just a 1 year for the last 2 years until we hit that point. But to be brutally honest, I kind of enjoy the 6-month scans just so I know something's going on. I don't know if I can jump to that year yet.
I talk to so many people who, there's two sides of it. There's the scanxiety where, you're like, oh my gosh, is the scan going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Is it all going to be okay? But on the other side, there's so much relief and just, feeling happy when those scans come back negative and you don't necessarily want to spread it out. So there's like two sides of it. Like, I don't want to have the scan, but I do because I want the all clear after it's done.
Yeah.
I don't hear from too many people who are like, no, I can go 5 years or whatever. Like, no, I want to still see you every 6 months for the rest of my life.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a blessing in disguise, really, to hear those words that everything's fine and it's clean. But yeah, scanxiety is a real thing. It is. At this point, I've gotten a little bit used to it. But early on, I remember, sitting on the parking lot by myself, just trying to find the courage to get up and go in there and do that, not knowing, if you're going to hear those words again, it's back, or, you've got a reoccurrence. But so far I can count my blessings and been clean ever since.
Now with esophageal cancer, because you don't hear that much about esophageal cancer, is it just that it's not super common? I mean, obviously it's not as common as breast cancer or lung cancer or anything, but is it a more rare form of cancer or is it still pretty common?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Going back and looking at the statistics, when I was diagnosed in 22, there's only about 20,000 people in the U.S. diagnosed a year.
Wow.
The problem is the mortality rate is very high. Out of those 20,000, only about 4,000 call ourselves survivors. So it's a
Is it just
very,
because it's not caught soon enough, or is it usually
exactly,
very
yeah.
aggressive?
It's
Or
the signs and symptoms. There really aren't any. Luckily, I did have that problem swallowing food. That was my only symptom. And what doctors have told me is by the time people realize something's going on and they go in, again, it's too late. They're already at that stage 4 mark and there's not a whole lot that can be done for them. I was also told that, if I was in my 70s or 80s, that, that would have been a death sentence just because of the type of treatment that you have to be on to kind of combat this is very invasive, and anybody at a higher age level probably wouldn't be able to make it through. So my age and my health and my condition was on my side this time.
I love to hear that. God has plans for us, and He makes sure that you know that we figure things out when we
Absolutely,
need to. Most of the time,
absolutely.
yeah. Awesome.
Amen to that.
And so tell me, like, do you have any complications, any like considerations? Because, you no longer have an esophagus. Your stomach, I'm assuming, is basically attached to the back of your throat. Like, are there special considerations or, things that are different because of that?
There are. So, because they took out my esophagus, and pardon me, I don't know the medical term, but there's, essentially a flap that cuts off your esophagus from your stomach that keeps all your
Hmm.
stomach acid and everything intake. Well, I don't have one. It's gone. So, now I have to sleep at an angle. I'm on a prescription to reduce my stomach acid that I take twice a day. Obviously, I've lost over 65 pounds from this surgery. It's just like the gastric bypass surgery that you hear about that overweight people get because my stomach is probably the size of my fist, and so my meals are very small. I typically eat about 6 times a day just to try and get enough calories in for my size, but I'm still struggle with weight loss ever since. And anything gastric, you have your internal issues, right? And to spare everybody of the details, but till this day, I still have gastric issues and intestinal issues when I eat, especially if I overeat. It gets to be bad. I don't have that cutoff valve that tells you you're full anymore, so I just got to kind of gauge. And Thanksgiving dinner, it's rough to try and hold back without stuffing your face. So,
Just eat little bits all day long, right?
exactly, just eat little bits all day long, and believe me, if I overdo it, it's my own fault.
But considering the alternative, it's a wonderful thing.
Exactly, and I tell that to people all the time. If this is what I have to deal with on a daily basis, way better than what it could have been. What it could have been for sure.
And you said that you have two boys. How old are they?
I do. Right now, one will be 18 this December, and then one just turned 15 in August. And that's another big portion of my cancer journey is my kids at the time had just turned 12 and 15. So, they were teens basically, and at that age where they knew something was going on. So I felt it very important as a parent and as a dad to make sure my kids knew every little detail, no matter how scary or it could have been. I just felt it was very important. My wife and I thought that we needed to carry them along with us in every moment of this journey. And so I immediately, the day I was diagnosed, we sat him down and had a conversation with him that evening. Let him know that Dad had cancer, but he was going to fight in every way he could to make sure he was still around. And I'm so proud of them. They were incredible. Just the way they handled things and the way they dealt with it. I was very, very proud of my boys.
Awesome. Kids are amazing and they're so resilient. And I've talked to people who have, not told their kids, who have told their kids, who've only told them certain things. And
Mhm.
everybody's journey is different and how they choose to, explain things is different. Fortunately, my daughter this was last year, so she was 24
Oh,
and
wow.
she no longer lives with us. But, I just kind of told her, I said, I'm going in for surgery. I have a tumor. It's all going to be okay. And, she was with me through it all. And I'm very grateful. She even said that she would shave her head with me if I ended up needing chemo, which I didn't.
Yeah,
But yeah, kids are tough, and they bounce back, and they tend to surprise you sometimes, which is fantastic.
absolutely. It's funny you say that because my boys, yeah, we went out in the backyard and they shaved my head for me when my hair started
Aw,
falling out. So, every step of the way, we tried to make it a memory for
that's fantastic.
them.
And now Dad's NED and gonna stay that way.
That's right, absolutely. And now my hair's falling out just because I've got almost an 18-year-old, both in high school. Now that's the reason my hair's falling out.
It's not very gray though, so that's a good
Well,
sign.
we got on the sides
Yeah,
here. Yeah, it's starting to come in.
that's where it starts. And my poor husband is, with a teenage daughter, he's very salt and peppery
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit because I really want to talk about, you kind of made it a mission to help other people with cancer, to help men with cancer and really get into the mental health aspect. So I want to kind of transition in where, how did that all come about and how did you kind of shift, from your cancer diagnosis and treatment into kind of what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So it first started with a program called Friend for Life Cancer Support. And I learned of it through a mentor and a small church group that I go to. And basically, what it is they pair people with similar diagnosis. That way, you can have essentially a person to go to with questions, of what's coming up, about treatments, about therapies, just anything and everything. And so I initially, going through my journey, signed up for Friend for Life and got partnered with a gentleman who's local to the area. He was esophageal cancer survivor as well. He was going into his 12th year.
Wow.
Turns out we had the very same surgeon that did
Oh my
our
gosh.
esophagectomies. Yeah, so that was encouraging for me just to see somebody that been living for 12 years with this. And I figured, he had his done back in the late 90s. So I figured if that was the case, we had to have made some advancements since then. I would be in a good place. So
Now,
that's
was this after all of your treatments that you found Friend for Life?
this was right in the heart, right in the middle. So
Okay, awesome.
yeah, I got partnered with him, and believe me, my questions were about chemotherapy, about radiation, about kind of the issues I was having with eating and the surgery that was upcoming. I wanted to know everything what I was getting involved with, and it was really helpful because I didn't go blind into any of this.
Good.
Now, I know everybody's story is different, and they might have different outcomes and things, but at least it was something. I wasn't going in blind and not knowing what I was getting into. So I'm very grateful for those two people that helped me along the way with Friends for Life. And, I vowed to them that once I came out of this on the other side, that I would do the very same thing for somebody. So my first initial was I signed up to be a mentor for Friend for Life. And currently I've mentored 5 people, and unfortunately 2 have passed away. But I still have 3 that I'm mentoring now. My oldest is probably going on 2 years, 2 years now that we've been kind of going back and forth and talking with each other. He has recently had a relapse and going through immunotherapy. So, we're in the process of getting him through that. But again, it's just another avenue to talk to somebody that's been there. That's actually a slogan, fight cancer with somebody who's been there before.
Nice.
And it's a perfect fit. And so that's how it kind of got started. And from there, it grew a little bit. I still needed more. I still needed more for myself. And it was about a year after my surgery, about 6 months into being NED. I met a young lady who was on the board with Epic Experience. I met her through a mutual friend, and immediately we started talking about Epic Experience. And she wanted me to go on this Epic journey, and you need to go, and you got to go out to Denver. And okay, I'll do it. So I signed up, and yeah, she got me into a winter camp, March of 23. An Epic Experience is basically just an adventure camp for cancer survivors where they can learn to live beyond cancer. But it's so much more. I mean, yes, there's the adventure side of it, and they only house 11 survivors at each camp, so it's very, very small and intimate. And of course, in the mountains of Colorado, you couldn't be in a more beautiful place.
Right.
But just
I know I applied this year and I was not accepted. So
yes,
I'm
yes,
gonna keep trying.
we'll be working to try to get you in there. But just the conversations around the campfire and the conversations around people that know exactly what you're going through, it's very, very, very beneficial. And that's what I got out of the most, is just the connection I made with people. And I mean, even now today, I mean, we're still in chat groups. Obviously, we talk to each other over Facebook and over the phone, and just congratulate each other on each milestone that pops up along the way. So it's gotten to be a really good experience.
I always say that, well, actually, I got this from someone else that I interviewed, that cancer is the worst club with the best
Yes,
members.
that's right. That's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah,
It
the club
sucks, and it's
nobody
a club
wants to
nobody
join.
wants to join, but the friends that you make for life from it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it's I hate using this word and I hate calling it this, but cancer has truly been a blessing. And the only reason I say that is because the people I've met along the way.
Mm.
And just think right now, I mean, us having this conversation and podcast, it
Right?
wouldn't have taken place if cancer wasn't involved. So
Absolutely. For both of us.
exactly. So,
Right.
in some form or fashion, it has been a blessing because the people I've met along the way have just been incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah. But outside of Epic Experience, I'm also a part of Man Up to Cancer, which is a group for males only. It started as a Facebook group about 4 years ago, and has grown to over 3,000 members now, all
Wow.
men.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, there's been each year they hold a gathering of wolves, is what they call it. There's been 3 so far. I've attended 2 of them.
Okay.
The second one, which was last year, was in Buffalo, New York, and then this third one, this past year, was in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And so this past one, there was over 175 male cancer survivors. And so, you talk about the connections and things you make with Epic. It's almost, how can I say this? It's almost just as powerful when you're sitting with a bunch of men. Um, Typically, we're not the ones that reach out and ask for help.
Right.
And so when you're in that group and setting, it's really powerful when you hear that many men tell each other that they love each other and I'm proud of you. And, we're here for you. We know what you're going through, reaching out a hand. I've never hugged so many strangers in my entire life, but, even after a weekend, it's almost feels like you've known them your entire life. And, same thing. It's basically a Facebook group that everybody can post questions and concerns and comments and just let you know what's going on. But it's just another avenue to kind of connect with other people and, make sure that you're reaching out and that when guys need help, you're there to pick them up.
Well, and I love that. And we talked a little bit before we went live about that, women tend to want to find other people going through a similar thing, and women tend to connect more and want to share more and just want to be out there advocating. And men are, for lack of a better word, not like, they feel like they don't want to burden other people with their problems, and they don't really want to share with other men. And which is why 90% of the interviews on my podcast have been women, because I think a lot of men just want to do it, get it done, get it over with, and go forward. And I know I want to talk more about this, but I think that's a true detriment to men because this is such a huge thing. And whether you're extroverted, introverted, want to share, not want to share, like you need other people who have been there or who are going through it as well to be able to connect and get that support and emotional help and mental health because we can't go through this alone.
Absolutely. And, that's when and where I recognized I needed help was, when I was done with treatments and I was done with surgery and, I was given the blessing of being called NED. That's where I struggled the most. I wasn't seeing doctors every day.
Mm-hmm.
You were sent home and go back to regular life. I didn't know how to do that. I became angry. I was very angry. I needed to know why I'd gotten cancer. I tried to take care of myself and I'd worked out in the gym and I ate well and, this happened to me. And I became very cynical and got to be very angry. And it started to show in my family, with my kids, with my wife. She had to actually sit me down one day and just told me, you have to stop. Like you can't continue down this path. Or you're going to hurt us and, you're not helping yourself get through this. And I didn't know how to cope with that. Like you said, you're sent home and that you're told to go back to regular life. And I just didn't know how to do that. And so that's part of the reason why I started reaching out to these groups. Just seeking help was one for myself. And then when I got into it and realized what it did for me, I realized I had to do that for other people. And, especially being a man, I'm here to say, reach out. Somebody is there to listen. You need to talk to somebody. I can't tell you how many times that I've been around guys and they've told me, well, the only reason I'm here is my wife signed me up to do this. I 8 out of 10 times, that's the only reason they're there is because somebody
got them there.
But it got them there. Absolutely. And then again, they go through it and they understand, they have the conversations, and then they realize that, they're so thankful that happened. And again, I'm here to say as a man, if you're going through that, reach out. You have to talk to somebody. You can't keep this all into yourself. There's somebody out there that will listen. There's somebody that's been through it too. Just know you're not alone. That's the biggest thing I can come through as far as the mental health side of things is that you can't keep it in. You have to get it out and you have to talk to somebody.
And so can you, and I don't even know, maybe you've already said it, but I guess, I think that men may have, like you did, have a hard time distinguishing that they need help. Mm-hmm. So are there certain kind of warning signs that they can look for or the people in their lives can look for in them to just make them aware that, hey, there's something wrong here and, you need to get some help or guidance or support or something?
Yeah. Obviously, like I talked about earlier, it's, family and friends are the ones that are closest to you. Right. And, so if I find myself just being very short-tempered, things that shouldn't bother me did. And then, the cynical part was, I would look at strangers in a different way, if that makes sense, and not going too far into it, but, I would judge people, for example, if I saw somebody smoking a cigarette, I would judge them immediately. And, how can you do that to your body? How can you do that? And, it's not fair. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. Because, we all live different lives and we all make choices. And depending on that choice or how you react is your right. And that's when my wife stepped in, is when I was becoming cynical of not only my family and friends, but people I didn't even know. And so she knew immediately something was going on. And again, just had to stop me and said, you need to get some help. And if it's not professionally, you got to find something. And that's why I'm so grateful for, programs like Friends for Life, Epic Experience, and Man Up to Cancer, because, they're fairly easy to get involved with as far as, social media and aspects, that you can have some involvement with them. And even if that's as far as you go as just joining a Facebook page, honestly, that could be enough. That's all that you could need. But you can take it so much further if you want. But at least that's a starting point in the beginning for you.
Okay. And you mentioned it, and I hear it a lot, and I want to bring it back up again. I think I'm actually going to do a solo episode about it, but a lot of people have mentioned, and it happened to me too, that end of active treatment, it's really, I mean, people talk about it as like falling off a cliff,
Mm-hmm.
because you're in active treatment, you have the doctor's appointments every week or however often you're talking to a doctor or, an infusion tech or something all the time. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're NED, go back to life. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people, like I said, just fall off a cliff at that point because their whole lives have been dictated for the entire length of treatment. Then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know how to go back to normal life. Like there was before cancer and now there's what? And I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, but just like that's really the point where I think people, if they haven't during treatment, they need to find some kind of support or some kind of connection to help get through that phase because people don't expect it. Like, oh, hey, I can get back to life now. And then, okay, I don't know what that is. And I'm completely lost.
Absolutely. And I almost wish that was part of your regimen, right? I've had some conversations with even my cancer care team that should be kind of the ending, kind of exit strategy is, okay, yes, we're sending you home. There's nothing more we can do here. But if you find yourself needing extra help, here are some resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really needs to be a part of it. But you're right. To your point is when, you're going through treatment and you're going through, you have somebody there with you every day, whether it's appointments, and you really don't have time to think because you're just focused on getting better, right? If that's what you can do, I'm focused on getting better. And I remember getting discharged from the hospital, and after my treatments, ringing the bell, and there's pictures and videos, and not one of them I had a smile on my face. You would think that would be the happiest moment, outside of having children or getting married.
Right.
Doctors telling you just beat cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Should probably be one of the happiest moments of your life. And not once did I ever smile because I didn't want to be in that position. I never wanted to have to beat cancer. But as we know, God works in mysterious ways. There's a path and a journey for all of us. And I've gotten to a point now that I embrace it. I'm passionate about it. But it takes a while to get to that point. It takes a while, and as we've talked before, unless you reach out, nobody's really going to do it for you.
Yeah.
It has to be you. It has to come from you because then you're going to get the most out of it, right? If somebody else puts you in that place, then you're just doing it to maybe appease somebody else. But if you do it for yourself, you have more into the game, and it's really going to benefit you. Early on, and I even say this now, the reason I'm doing it is I'm trying to make other cancer survivors smile because, I was not one of those people. I was not smiling at any point, and I didn't know why. I couldn't bring myself to that happiness, to that joy. And when everybody else was celebrating and, telling me that, you look great and fantastic, you beat cancer, I never once smiled. And it's taken a long time. It's taken a long time to get out of that, headspace.
So find a group, find a support structure, find a therapist.
Absolutely. All the above.
All of the above, or at least one of the above, somebody that,
Yes.
that you can reach out to and can help. Because the other thing is, you tend to have all the support while you're going through active treatment because you look sick, especially if you're doing chemo or whatever, and people are just showering you. And then when you get that all clear, then like people go away. It's like, oh, they've got their own lives. She's fine or he's fine. Like they're done. And then everybody's gone. And I
Yeah,
think that's probably when we need people even more. And
exactly.
boom,
Yeah, you couldn't be more true. I mean, the amount of cards and phone calls and text messages and visits, and not even for myself, just for my family. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many people brought food or gift cards or something just so, my wife didn't have to stay home and cook when I was going through all this. I'm so grateful, but you're right. I mean, once I was kind of released, all that stopped. The text, the phone calls, it all stopped. And you're right, that's when you need it the most. And, no offense to family and friends, even the ones that held on the longest, they still don't understand what you're going through. And, until you meet that person that maybe is on that cancer journey, that's really when you make the most connections. I'm grateful for everybody and everything that they did for me. But meeting 11 strangers at Epic Experience in the middle of the mountains in Colorado did more for my mental health than even my wife, my kids, or even my parents could provide for me.
so reach out to others, I would say, is that, and I mean, I think we've really talked about it. And I normally ask people at the end of the interview, like, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's just starting on this journey, who's in the middle of this journey? And I mean, I think we've talked about it, but is there anything else that, any other advice that you would give to somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides, like we talked, reaching out, one piece of advice I would give is, and somebody mentioned this to me before I was going through treatments. They said, you can't finish until you start. And it
Ooh.
was just a small sentence that made so much sense because I was so anxious and so scared of that first chemotherapy session that, you know, I would immediately go to a negative place. And until somebody said that, you can't finish until you start, it made more sense to me than anything. And Melissa, I'm not kidding you. You know how you have like advent calendars leading up to Christmas? I had one for my radiation, and every day I would come home after treatment, I would X through that day, and I knew exactly how many I had left to that ending date. It helped me tremendously because, and I'll never forget it. And I still use that today, but you can't finish until you start.
I love that. I wrote
That
it
was
down.
the one best piece of advice that anybody gave me.
Awesome. Okay, so Denny, where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can people get in touch with you? And we're going to put links to Friend for Life, Man Up for Cancer, and Epic Experience in the show notes. But,
Yeah.
how can people reach out to you, or how can they follow you if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I'm on Facebook. That's probably primarily one I use. I'm not a big social media guy, but Facebook is probably the one. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So if you search Denny Williams, you can find me there. My email address is dennywilliams12@gmail.com. So I encourage anybody that's listening and just wants to reach out and talk to me. If I'm your support, I'll do it. So please feel free to email me. And I tell people all the time, I'm here to tell my story. No matter what day or time it is, if you're reaching out about a cancer journey, I'm here to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with all of us today. I really appreciate it. And, every little snippet that we can give to people to make sure you're getting support, make sure you have people in your life that you can talk to is just one more step in the right direction.
Absolutely. That's part of your care as well. Just remember that. That's part of
Absolutely.
your treatment as well.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank
and
you.
and have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.